Well, hello everyone, and another hearty warm welcome back, and thanks again for tuning in once more to Classic Dirt Bike TV, where we try and track down those long lost classic off-roaders from back in the day and share them with you here on my channel. Now in this next video posting, we're going to take a look at another Spanish made motorcycle, and just one of the many off-road bikes produced by this Spanish brand during the late 1960s and 70s. So let's jump straight into the video and check out a 1978 Mark 12 370 Bultaco motocrosser. Now the history of Bultaco really dates back to 1958, when the company was formed by Francesc Paco Bulto, who some years before was actually a director of the Montesa company before setting up his new Bultaco motorcycle franchise in an old Spanish farmhouse. Now just less than 2 years later, Bultaco then launched their first ever motorcycle, which was called the Bultaco 125 Trala. Now sometime later, as you know, Bultaco then went on to produce countless of these iconic race bikes through the many years that they were in business, and they sold in their absolute thousands across Europe and in the USA. But Bultaco sold many different models of off-road bikes, and they had the Matadors, which were for your enduro riders, the Sherpa Ts, which were for your observed trials riders, and these Pursangs were for use in motocross. But over the many years that Bultaco were building these race bikes, they gained iconic status, and when Jim Pomeroy shocked the motocross world in 1973 when he blew away all comers in the Spanish Grand Prix on what was essentially a stock 250 bike, it seemed that shortly after that just everybody had to have a Bultaco Pursang. Now our featured bike is a 1978 370 Pursang, and this machine was actually advertised for sale when I grabbed these shots at the famous Drumlanrig Castle in 2017. Now it's not a fully original bike from 1978 due to it having one or two non-original parts fitted, but nevertheless this is still a good example of one of these 370 Bultacos. Now when it comes to these 370 Bultaco engines, these were superb two-stroke motors and were reasonably reliable, and as far as my memory serves me, I think they put out about just under 39 horsepower, which wasn't that bad for a 370 two-stroker. Now as you can see, our bike's engine is fed by this big bore Amel carburetor, and no reed valve intake of course, just a stock straightforward piston port intake. Now also our bike still has its original pair of skinny foot pegs, and the clutches and gearboxes again on these bikes were pretty strong, and they were certainly no more or less reliable than any of the current Japanese bikes. Naturally, of course, the Bultaco trademark with this forward folding kickstarter and their polished engine casings, which of course was a big feature on all of Bultaco's off-road motorcycles. But some of the earlier Bultacos had their gear shifters on the right hand side of the bike up to about 1974, and from 1975 Bultaco then moved the shifter to the left hand side, probably to make them easier to sell, as almost all of the Japanese motocrossers at this time had their gear selectors on the left. Now the bike's exhaust expansion chamber on this bike looks just about right for a 1970s Bultaco, and even looks in pretty good nick considering the bike's age. Although this rear muffler is certainly not a stock 1978 part, but is made of alloy and is more than likely lighter than the original fitment. One of the other trademarks of all Bultacos, of course, were these polished top and bottom triple clamps, which had, as I recall, a set of beater front forks fitted, which weren't actually that bad, although this was of course still the 1970s, and as we now know, motocross suspension has moved forwards in leaps and bounds since these standard hydraulic telescopic forks were introduced. Drum brakes once again, as were many of the motocrossers of its age, but these did a decent job of slowing you down, although if it turned into a soaking wet race event, then you had to plan ahead a bit if you wanted to make some kind of emergency stop. Now correct me if I'm wrong here, but as I recall, these 370s had a pair of beater rear shocks with remote reservoir gas cylinders as original factory fittings back in the day, although you can see that this owner's now fitted a pair of quality Olin piggybacks to this Spanish Bultaco. Now the late 1970s was about the time that Bultaco decided to ditch their very fragile fiberglass tanks and side panels and began fitting these moulded plastic items to their race bikes. Now these naturally could take a lot more punishment than the brittle fiberglass parts, although the roughly textured surface made it quite awkward sometimes to get decals and graphics to stick to them. Now these 370s had a steel rear swing arm, and you can also see that Bultaco even polished the bike's rear drive sprocket. For what reason I'm not entirely sure, but probably to make them more appealing to potential buyers when they saw these lovely shiny looking bikes through the showroom window. Although mind you, polished surfaces were a very big part of the Bultaco sales pitch, and it's said that these bikes were built on dirt floors, so it couldn't have been easy for Bultaco keeping them in pristine condition when they were being put together. But these 78s also had a very comfortable seat, as I remember, because I actually did get a chance to have a go on one of these 370s back in the day, and it was a fairly plush ride, although the bike maybe didn't fit my 6-foot 4-inch frame too well. But these 370 Bultaco Pursangs were made as Bultaco was actually nearing the end of the line when they closed the factory just the following year in 1979 due to some kind of industrial unrest within the company and huge market pressures from the big four Japanese bike builders, who were now flooding the market with cheaper, and some would even say better, motocross machines. But these 370 Pursangs were still decent bikes, as they had a very good chassis, a stonking 2-stroke motor and reasonably good suspension, although many riders who bought Bultacos back in the day tended to stick with them, and they were usually pretty loyal to the brand and would almost always buy the latest model when it became available. Now of course there were better and faster machines around in 1978, and to be fair, the biggest percent of them were Japanese bikes, and these were very popular with club and professional riders alike. But for a relatively small Spanish European manufacturer like Bultaco, they did build some iconic off-roaders in their time, and these 370s were certainly up there with the best of them. Okay, I do hope you enjoyed that very brief look around a 1978 370 Bultaco, and remember, if these are the kind of bikes that you like to look at here on YouTube, then I do hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel to see more old crossers from back in the day. Okay, next up we'll be taking a look around this 1981 250 Michael. So until then, stay safe riding your old vintage motocrossers until we speak again, right here on Classic Dirt Bike TV.